I'm Ryan, this is my brother Daniel, and this is Roles in the Family. Today we are going to be reviewing Agricola, a strategic worker placement game about farming in the 17th century.
That's right, and if you want a tight strategy game that rewards repeated play and always presents a fresh puzzle, well, you are about to hear why Agricola is one of our all-time favorites. And if you want to check out Agricola for yourself after hearing this review, we've got a link down below. But Ryan, here we go. Let's jump into the review.
In Agricola, you are a farmer in the 17th century, starting from humble beginnings with a 2-room wooden house and acres of empty land. Over the course of the game, you will work to sow fields, build pastures, raise animals, expand your house, and grow your family as you strive to have the best farm by the end of the game.
Each round, your workers can go out to collect resources or perform actions, but you'll want to be mindful of your opponents as you compete for the common spaces on the board. After all workers are placed, they return home and the next round begins with a new action space being introduced into the game. After a set number of rounds, it is harvest time, and you will reap crops from your fields, feed your family, and any animals on your farm will reproduce.
Agricola is tight and unforgiving, and the rounds leading up to the harvest will have you pondering the best way to gather enough food while still progressing your farm to allow you to do more in the future. One of the first and most important questions you will ask yourself in a game of Agricola is, what is my food strategy? Whether it is baking grain, cooking animals, or utilizing other food-related card effects, alleviating the pressure of feeding your family is what allows you to effectively pursue the other goals in the game.
One of these goals, supported by sufficient food, is growing your family, which is the most powerful way to get more done as you will have more workers to use in every round. However, powerful opportunities also come in the form of occupation and minor improvement cards that you are dealt at the beginning of the game. This hand is a unique puzzle of abilities and positive effects that will guide your strategy and give you advantages that no other player has.
We can't speak to the quality of Agricola's solo mode, but it does play great at 2 to 4 players. The 5 to 6 player expansion allows for even larger games, and while we have had a lot of fun at 5 players, 6 feels like it might be pushing it a little bit in length and downtime.
While most people think of more flashy, exciting subject material when discussing thematic games, there is no denying that Agricola is very thematic, with its mechanisms directly tying into the farming theme. It isn't a game you are necessarily going to play for the theme, but it is definitely more thematic than most Euro strategy games.
Agricola is a game that demands a lot of strategic and tactical skill to play well, and while the initial hands of cards may present unequal advantages among the players, the outcome is still mostly determined by each player's choices.
It is easy to look at the individual player boards where you each build up your farm and want to label Agricola as a multiplayer solitaire experience. But you will quickly realize just how much interaction there is in the core worker placement system. While you are strategizing how to build out your own farm, you are constantly trying to weigh the order to take actions based on your opponents, and often need to adapt because an opponent did something unexpected.
It takes a bit of time to get everything set up for Agricola, and often upwards of 10 to 15 minutes is spent with all players evaluating their cards at the beginning of the game. Now, we consider that initial strategizing part of the game itself, but it is often a little while before the first turn actually begins.
The systems in Agricola are not overly complicated, but players really need to understand each component of a successful farm, and there are a lot of little rules across those areas. Additionally, the unforgiving nature of the game means that teaching the game well often requires sharing some basic strategic advice to help new players have a positive first experience.
The variability in Agricola is through the roof, and that variability comes primarily from the wide range of powerful and interesting abilities on the occupations and minor improvements dealt at the beginning of the game. Truly no game of Agricola is going to feel the same, as every hand of 14 cards presents its own unique puzzle to solve.
And that brings us right into the biggest strength of Agricola: the cards. Right out of the gate, you are presented with a different set of opportunities than any previous game, And it is your job to find strategic combos and come up with a basic blueprint of how you want to approach the game. And these effects can be as simple and powerful as gaining extra resources when you visit an action space, to as exotic as effects like scoring points equal to the number of animals in the first group of animals you take during the game. For those that enjoy Agricola, the cards offer a lifetime of satisfying repeated play that always feels fresh.
But underneath all the card variety is a worker placement system that is so nuanced in how you approach it. The way the resources accumulate ensures that action spaces that went unchosen quickly become extremely attractive, forcing you to weigh your original plans against the opportunity to get a great deal on picking something up that you'll need for later. Each of your limited actions is so precious, and you will often try to optimize by taking advantage of a space that lets you play a minor improvement in addition to an action like renovating your house. Minor improvements can also be played when taking start player, which is yet another interesting valuation as you try to determine how important is it to move up to the front of the turn order. There is a certain level of stress that comes with navigating these tough choices in the tight decision space, but for those seeking interesting and meaningful decisions, they will find an endless well of them here.
Few games blend such clear master planning strategy with such rich tactical maneuvering the way that Agricola does. At times, you will zoom out and try to think of the big picture. What cards do I think I'm going to play, and by which round do I need to get them into play? But minutes later, you'll be thinking of nothing but where your last two workers should go this round, weighing the value of spaces made ambiguous by a sea of interesting variables. A game of Agricola opens with the strategic analysis of a unique hand of cards, but then puts you in the trenches where you will need to make tough and satisfying tactical decisions from beginning to end.
At the end of the game, you will look down and see your unique farm that carries the story of all of the grueling decisions that you made over the course of the game. It is a satisfying conclusion. Well, depending on how well your plans came together, and it just feels good to see how you journeyed from just 2 wooden rooms to a full and hopefully thriving farm. For those that find satisfaction in building something tangible and challenging, Agricola delivers an extremely fulfilling game arc.
As much as we talk about Agricola rewarding repeated play, none of that matters if a player's first impressions are negative enough that they don't come back. And that is where the tight and unforgiving systems in Agricola can kind of work against it. It is not uncommon for a new player to reach the end of the game feeling like they never really could get things going, and watch as they get negative points across a variety of categories, potentially getting destroyed by more experienced players in the group. Some people just flat out won't like that kind of unforgiving gameplay, while others would maybe love it with additional plays, but never find out because the game was too merciless their first few times around.
While a lot of the arc of farms in Agricola is predictable due to the well-rounded end state that the players are targeting, growing your family for additional workers in particular can start to feel a little bit scripted. Experienced players will realize the importance of getting additional workers as soon as possible, and with only a single family growth action appearing for the majority of the game, it can often feel like a race to just get to that third worker. This is something that we think the Farmers of the Moor expansion actually does help improve by making the family growth rush a little more difficult as you balance the additional requirement to heat your home, but it is a minor issue that some players might be put off by. And now let's get to our personal ratings for Agricola.
Well, Ryan, I don't believe that there is a perfect board game out there, but man, does Agricola come close. I'm going to be giving it a 10.
Woo! 10! Is that the first 10 on the channel?
First 10 on the channel.
Oh, man.
Man, it's funny. The games that I have a tendency to love, I play all sorts of games, but my favorite games are these thematic story, usually each year with my top plays, those are the ones that rise to the top. But man, Agricola just ascends above all the other Euro games out there.
You got a soft spot in your heart for 17th century farming.
It's something about that 17th century farming. It really is, I think for me, and I would dare say perfect blend of that long-term planning with tactical decision
Hmm.
making. And I just think it comes together beautifully because, at the start of the game when you're looking at all your cards, I mean, you're like, okay, if because the arc, everyone knows where they got to
Yeah.
get to.
At
And
least
so
experienced players, which
right,
I think is a
right.
good call out, right?
Yeah.
Like that opening thing is way more satisfying
When you
when
know where you
you've
got to
played
go.
Agricola enough to know that. Yeah.
Right. So we know where we got to go. I know I got to have a food strategy. I know I got to get more people. I know I got to build this well-rounded farm. And so you're kind of at the beginning of the game looking at this. Okay, I'm gonna use this card and these two cards together, and that's a ton of fun thinking about that long-term planning. But then the game starts going, and the whole accumulating resources on action spaces makes it so tough because I've got this plan of what I'm gonna do, and then suddenly there's 5 reeds sitting there, and I'm just like, ah, I that wasn't what I
Daniel's notorious for not taking read, and
I
then
always push off read. I just think it's gonna be there when I need it, and it's not. And so it's like, man, is the opportunity that presents itself, even if I don't need it right now, is that better than what I was gonna do immediately,
Mhm.
and and that when you combine these like accumulating resources in with a really tight worker placement where
Such limited workers.
yeah, limited workers and space, if when someone takes that, just go back to the read example, it takes a while for that to build, like things get blocked and it's not like it's just going to be back like that. And so it just puts you in a ton of these tough situations, but I think it really is a game that makes you feel you feel almost a little, not, I don't know if nervous is the right word, but it's just tense. It's so
Yeah.
tense because every worker is critical. I mean, I'm trying to think, Ryan, of a game where I feel more importance with a worker placement where I
Yeah.
feel more value of this has got to deliver something really
Because
good for me.
you tend to come up with a plan leading up to a harvest that like you need every worker for that plan to work.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the only way I'm going to get my family growth and get this improvement out or something is
Yeah.
and so then it's like, well, if it takes every one of those getting blocked, and so that's where like the ordering becomes so important and where the
Oh,
interaction comes in more.
yep.
Because I'm looking over at Daniel and going, okay, this is kind of what I need to do this round. Where is he most likely to get in my way?
Yeah.
And you sometimes have to make some very like push your luck like decisions of
Oh,
like,
for sure.
man, like I think there's a decent chance that makes it around.
Right.
But how much am I willing
Yep.
to try that, and how bad would it be if it doesn't?
I think that's the big thing for me is a lot of Euro games. I usually can be like, oh, well, there'll be something good I can do. And it gets, it's okay if they're going before me. I don't really have to pay attention to what they're doing because there'll be something good I can find.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, in this one, you are locked in on what are other people doing because, yeah,
Otherwise, you're going to be reevaluating your whole plan.
Your whole
You're
plan
going to be like,
constantly,
okay, I
yeah.
need to come up with something else.
You're going to be at the mercy of what the other players are taking, really. So start player is super important. I just think, it is this similar game arc. Every game you're it's not one of those games where it's not a sandbox where, oh, this game I'm just going to ignore all this
Yeah.
stuff and get a million sheep. It's every game you're really trying to get kind of to the same end goal, but how you get there and the path that you get there. And that's where those cards are just incredible because they offer just so many unique powers and abilities and combos and they're and they feel so powerful because they allow you to take this tight worker placement and then give you these incredible abilities to kind of manipulate that common system throughout the game. So I mean, it's I think that's why it rises to the top. It's the long-term planning, the tactical with the tactical decision making, the powerful cards. It all just comes together into experience where Ryan, we've played it, over 60, 70 times and it's every time.
Yeah,
I am
it's just
so
as high.
excited. I am so excited to play a game. So I'm coming in with a 10, but Ryan, what are your thoughts
Yeah, I
on
mean,
Agricola?
before I add some more love to Agricola, I will have to add another 10 to the stack because
Wow.
Agricola is just. I don't have a lot of, and like we talked about, like, we
Yeah.
don't think of a 10 as a perfect game, though sometimes
Yeah.
there's games that approach perfection for someone.
Mhm.
But Agricola is at the top right now,
Yeah.
that very top tier of games for me. I think the thing you're building is so interesting and dynamic. Like it's a
Yeah.
very like I think of other worker placement games or things where you're doing things on your own board that tend to be a little more structured. I get like Agricola kind of leaves it kind of wide open with this grid of where you're going to decide to do pastures and your home,
Mhm.
and like it's just a very interesting system that all of it is feeding into. And I know we love playing with the Farmers of the Moor expansion because it adds the
Yeah.
forest immortals, and that really
Very
leads
fun.
to you having kind of different looking farms. And so that's like a big just satisfaction in the game is seeing how this farm fills out. Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said, like especially the balance of strategy and tactics. Like it's
Mhm.
so fun to get that hand at the beginning and you're thinking so big, right? You're dreaming
Yeah.
of like despite, getting to the point where I'd say like we're pretty good at Agricola, at least as casual players. Rarely does my game end up going how I thought like I
No,
might with that
yeah.
opening hand. And I think that's a good thing. Like, I
Yeah.
think it's so interesting how you have to tactically adapt. And it just makes for every round is just so, I don't know, just the decisions are exactly the types of decisions that I
Mhm.
enjoy making in games. I mean, we got Agricola originally, I think, 12 years ago.
Yeah, I was
So
wondering
when we're
that this
talking
morning,
about
yeah.
this is a lot of plays, it's a lot of plays over a long
Long time.
time.
We've gotten a lot of
And
games since then.
yeah, a lot of games since then. We're always, researching, looking for new games. The fact that this is standing today as tens and honestly higher than probably 10 years ago when we still
Yeah.
loved, over the years, I think it's only gotten better because of how much it rewards that repeated play. We
Yeah.
recently have upgraded to the revised
Well, I was
edition
gonna
and
say the
got all
revised
of
edition,
the deck
fantastic.
expansions. I just saw that they're releasing another big deck expansion.
Oh,
It's like, do I need more cards? Probably.
probably. Yeah.
I don't, but like just the
Yeah.
having more variability in what kind of combinations you get is
Yeah.
what makes the game so fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just I have a hard time. Like, there's a lot of games, Euro strategy games that I really love,
Mhm.
but like there's this gap between Agricola and some of
Mhm.
my other favorites, and I try to like figure out, why is that? And I think a lot of the things we're talking about all kind of come together for that, but it does make me wonder like, what game is gonna what would a game need to have to
Yeah.
approach it or like dethrone kind of what Agricola has been for me.
Yeah, and I think with the mechanics being just so perfect for what we're looking for, I mean, Agricola has probably like one of the highest floors for us in terms of delivering a good I mean, it's not even just every game of Agricola is like fine or good. It's like great. And now it doesn't mean you do
Yeah.
great every game. You sometimes have a
Yeah, yeah,
poor,
yeah.
but usually you can look
That
at
also depends where
yourself.
your standards
Yeah.
are. Yeah, like we
Right.
have like, this certain
Yeah.
standard of what we want to get to. Honestly, my worst games of Agricola is when I feel like there's someone else that isn't enjoying it as much. Like maybe we were
Yeah.
introducing them and it's like I kind of feel bad. I want them to have a good experience with it. But I totally agree. It's like almost doesn't miss, like for
No.
me.
It's
Um,
yeah.
and so to be able to have a game that's so strategically rich and satisfying, so consistent, and then has the variability that like I'm never gonna get tired of it. Every game is a completely new way to approach it. It's just
Yeah.
like, what more
I know.
can I ask
I know.
for,
I feel
for
like
a
if you're
strategy game?
listening to this review and because there's people that won't like this game. It's
For
too
sure.
stressful. It's a lot of yeah, it's maybe too tight. It's not sandbox. It's really tight. You don't like reading a lot of the cards and all that. And if you don't like it, that's fine. But man, if you're listening to this and you're like, that sounds like something I want. I mean, I just think
Yeah, and I was
it's
trying to think like 'cause
got to check it
so
out.
much of the benefit in what we're talking about comes with the repeated play, to the point where I would say if you're the type of gamer that doesn't play your games many, many times, maybe you just like trying a lot of different games, maybe you just don't have that much time to game. I mean, if you're not going to get to play Agricola 10 times within a few years, I don't know that I would recommend it over a lot of other games, because I think that's where it becomes what we're kind of advertising as such a great experience.
Right. It has only gotten better. Yeah.
And yes, we probably at this point only get it to the table a few times a year, with all the other games in our collection. But we're so familiar with it at this point that, we've already put in the work to have that familiarity with the game.
We're at the point where the base mechanics just are so natural. We don't have to be thinking
we don't even have to look at the reference card to know, I think vegetables are coming out as the next action.
And because we got to that level, now all the variability we can just lean into that, and it just absolutely thrives.
Totally. Yeah. I'm going to have to cut us off because we'll be here all day, talking about Agricola. But yeah, Agricola, one of our all-time favorites, but ultimately we want to help you decide if it's the right game for you.
If you don't enjoy the stress of tight and challenging games, are overwhelmed trying to find combos with a hand of card effects, or you simply don't play the same game that many times, Agricola might not be for you.
But if you enjoyed the satisfaction of working through a difficult puzzle, like building something and seeing the final product, and want a game that rewards repeated play with endless unique variations, then as far as we're concerned, Agricola is as good as it gets.
If you want to check out Agricola for yourself, we've got a link down below. We got a couple more videos here, and we will see you in the next one.